And welcome to part 2 of this feedback on Faviola's challenge design, which includes clever and creative use of many different motifs to bring stitch variety and visual interest into the design. Motifs as fills, for example here on this moon, here on the wings, and in these petals. Motifs as lines, for example these little stars. On the feathers, that beautiful little chain stitch. And around the moon, this satin scallop, that's a motif. Again, this little block on the wings. And as stamps, these little stars, these teardrops or raindrops or pear drops, whatever we want to call them, the bread rolls, the little dots, these little candle wicks or colonial stars, all motifs. And of course the challenge in a design like this is that you have so many different motifs that you have to join all these little objects together. They're great, but of course you do need to know how to do the pathing. So let's go to the design, take a look. And just to make it a little easier to see, I've copied some of these motif elements out onto a separate page, onto a separate tab, so that we can just take a quick look at them. So here we've got motif number 7 out of the built-in library, used as a fill. Motif number 1 used as a fill. These little colonial stars were used as stamps, again built-in designs. Over here we have a chain stitch, we have these scallops, we have this beautiful little zigzaggy block design, a chain of stars, and of course a fern type design used as the tail feathers. And each of these is a user-defined. Faviola has digitized these and then saved them in her motif library by creating this in MBX Digitizer 5. You select the object and you go to create motif. You select your folder, give the motif that you want to use a name, and then you save it, and then you just set some little parameter points on it. And when you've done that, obviously it sits then in the library. So we can then go to digitize, and in this case digitize an open line. Let's select that motif and we can draw. And how quick is that for creating these little tail feathers here, which all Faviola needs to do then is just literally put a run line down here and in there, down here and up here, and just put run lines in between each of those objects in order to join them together with the pathing that runs underneath this little outline here, so that you don't keep having trims and hops all over the place. A fabulous job. Let's go back to the motifs. And it is so well worth doing it. So how do you actually make sure that you can see where you want to put your end points of your run lines? So make sure that you've got, whoops-a-daisy, need to go into True View and show connectors, and that must be ticked. And what we mean by the connector is this shows the start and stop points. So when I digitize, say for example a line here, I can start it here, pop it onto there, come down here and drop it onto here, onto the start point of the next object. If I then go down here, take that, slip it in between those two, which is where it needs to go, and turn it into the correct colour, which I suspect is this one, and lo and behold, that little trim point there has disappeared as we have pathed it all the way around. It starts here, goes up here, the run line brings it around, and it joins onto the next one, and that little circle has disappeared as well. Line number 2 will then go onto here, around the pathing route, and connect itself to the next object. And that way then we'll get rid of these little jumps here. So as you can see, motifs can save you a huge amount of time. Let's go into the True View and let's just delete those which are over the others. So Faviola, I really do hope that out of the other motifs that you will have made out of this design that you have actually included them now in your library. For example, these little fronds that were on the tail, your little bread rolls or coffee beans, but obviously let's get the density sorted out on those. Similarly, the pear drop, this lovely little lollipop, I can see that having thing, and this one is a gem. That came from here. So again, a line, and this is a repeated shape, so why digitize that ripple every single time? Turn it into a motif, and then digitize your line, stamp it on. You can then either copy and paste or go to Advanced Digitize and Motif Stamp. You can pick up, place it how you like, stick these stamps down all over the place, and then you can actually maneuver them, spin them around like any other object, position them where you want, pop your line in, put your travel lines in between, and do a great job. But they open up your creative possibilities as well. For example, put the two together, put a travel line to join the two little ends together, and all of a sudden you've got some potential ram's horns. Flip it upside down, it's a cartoon moustache. Put two of them together, turn it into a group, and it actually becomes a different kind of motif. You can start to see perhaps the beginnings of a border here. Let's take this one, drop it over here, pull up the layout tool, look at the circle, and let's have a look. Ta-da! All from one teeny weeny little motif like this. You can have endless fun, all sorts of creative opportunities. And so, having covered the fact that we take these motifs and then we join them together with travel lines, and we use the resequence bar to make sure that everything is in the right place, that we have object, travel line, and let's go back here. We have a couple of pathing issues that you mentioned that we need to sort out. And the first one is where a couple of start and stop points don't line up. So for example, here we have on the moon section, and if I just hide everything else, it just makes everything just a little bit easier to see. Now I'm going to press the T key, which puts it out of true view into digitizing view, and here we can see that there's an issue, and I just happen to know that it's on those gold feathers. So if I actually hid the other as well, and that now allows us to go in and find out possibly which objects it may be. So we could look at that one, press H for reshape, take this out of the way, move that down to there, pop that back on, and let's see, that's one of them. How about the next one, this one, H, and let's move that down onto there, and let's see if that does the job. And I just think it was that little line there that was a little bit too short, not joining on to this one here, and as you can see, that little start and stop issue has now disappeared. And there was a couple of other little places in the design where we had that. So if we now do unhide all, in fact it's there on the outline. Let's just hide everything else. There we go, it's just that little part here, and that's very easily resolvable in exactly the same way. You select one of the lines, you find which one it is that's become disconnected, and then you can line it up onto the next one. It resolves it, you get away with your trim, and on we go. However, the pathing issue, if you will, that we need to look at now is one that comes about because of having to path so many objects, having to join and connect them all. And for you, that means all these colour changes here is how that has come about. And it is possible to sort them out and reduce them, but of course we have to take a view. You've stitched this out, it's a fabulous design. you then take a view and say, right, am I ever going to use this design again? I spent hours digitizing it. Do I now want to spend maybe another hour or so just tidying it up, sorting it out and getting rid of all these color changes? If you're never going to use the design again, well, perhaps not. But if you are, then it's well worth making it machine friendly and as smooth and efficient as possible. And we'll just look at a couple of very, very quick points about that as to how we might go about doing it. So let's start with the moon. Hide unselected. And in fact, as we can see on the moon, we have two colours here which are the same. It's actually possible to path this in such a way that we can lose one of the colour changes. Here it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Very quickly through the player. I'll take it into digitizing view so it plays through more quickly. There we go. Next, let's take a look at the bird. We can go here and down to here. That gives us your bird. And in fact, what we can find here is we have two of these pale greens. We have three of the 269 green. Let's look at that one. You can see all the lines. So what's in the first one? That stitches out. Then we do some other colours. Then we stitch another. And then a bit further on, all these stars come in. It's actually possible to do 269 all in one run. There we go. Just by reorganizing. And in fact, as you can see, we can bring the bird actually down to 1, 2, 3, 4, just 5 colour changes if you wish. So you just keep repeating that kind of process through the rest of the design until you can actually get it down to these. Let's just take a final look at the end, and there's not a great deal that we can do here about the colour changes, but what we can do is look at improving the pathing on just one of the objects. Let's hide unselected here. Okay, and in fact what we can do is, if we just look at these flowers, they're not the flowers, are they? Those are the flowers here. And if we look at those, we can put travel lines between those and just pop them up to the front of the queue here and do that. And what does that look like? Here, get the flowers going in first, followed by the leaves, followed by the stem. Just zap it through, and then we're on to the stars. So in the final section we don't actually lose any of the colours, but we do improve the flow of the pathing by joining together underneath the stems these ripple flowers. I hope that you think that the design is worth doing that little bit of tidying up of that pathing and reducing the colours, because it's fabulous. Thanks for entering, Fabiola.